Hi, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and my guest today is famous person, coach, and host Abraham. Abraham suggested as a topic the execution of ideas as opposed to the generation and planning of ideas. What what can you tell us about why this topic is relevant at all to us or to you or to me or whatever?
Well, it's pretty relevant because, um, well, foremost, I find myself coming up with a lot of ideas sometimes. Um, and then some I take initiative on and some I don't take initiative on. They're kind of just things that I throw up in the air for confrontation mostly.
For confirmation, you mean?
Yeah, for confirmation. Conversation,
Over
actually.
conversation, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's caused a little bit of friction between us because Abe's got a lot of ideas of what he'd like to do in the speech and debate world, that many of which are not necessarily um, con- well, they're not necessarily inconsistent, but they're not what I want to be focusing on necessarily. So, Lacey, stop. Lacey, you need to stop. Stop. My dog.
We're putting a lazy thumb down.
Okay, so yeah, it's
They're not
kind of starting to amount of friction.
ideas that are not important in the status quo. That's what they are.
Hey, Delilah, what's going on?
Just got back.
Word. I'll talk to you in a minute. Uh, so anyhow, I do think that it's challenging sometimes to feel the scope of a project and to understand where one can continue to push forward and where one needs to contract. So, for example, with the debate business, I have a model that's very that doesn't overreach. You know, I'm confident that I'm not overreaching. I want to err on the side of not overreaching. Abraham sees all the potential and sees a lot of potential in terms of competition, especially in terms of, and he has also a lot of vision about what he'd like to do in terms of who he'd like to work with and what kind of events he'd like to work with. So the challenge then becomes the extent to which you exploit the potential that's been built up in the company to accomplish things, and whether those things that you accomplish with that potential that you exploit cause you to have more potential to exploit more or less potential to exploit less. And obviously, the former is preferable over the latter. Do you have any thoughts on that, Abraham?
No.
No?
It makes sense. It's pretty clear.
Yeah. But the problem is this. If a person doesn't have enthusiasm for something, then it's difficult to sustain any kind of meaningful work at something. Which is why I really don't like the existing model of the universe in which everybody has jobs where they probably don't feel super enthusiastic about doing the work, you know? So, what do you think about enthusiasm as a motivating factor, Abraham?
I think I honestly don't necessarily need enthusiasm as a major leading role in order to initiate, like take action on taking up a project or something, right? Let's use that as an idea example. I think it does help me, but I feel like it doesn't. It's not necessarily a huge role in the whole process that comes with, taking initiative on a certain idea or project that you have on mind.
What do you think the most important factor is for you in any project? Not forgetting about whether it involves me or not. For you, in terms of how enthusiastic you're going to feel about that project.
that's going to determine how enthusiastic I am about that project. I think it varies. I can be very specific and give you an example, but I feel like something that would demand a lot, will actually create a lot of enthusiasm on my part, is probably something that I'm passionate about, right? Like speech and debate stuff, right? Um, as you can tell, I'm pretty good at coming up with a lot of different ideas that stream from autonomy debate, for example, um, that are associated with that. I mean, and so because I'm very passionate about those type of things, it's that much more easy for me to come up with new ideas and say, oh look at this idea, look at this idea. That'd be cool because then I can continue being passionate about what I want to be while at the same time doing something that's going to be educationally, economically, blah blah blah, etc. beneficial for not only myself or just myself sometimes. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. It does. And
But I think it's best to do things with a leading role of knowledge instead of enthusiasm, because it's like if you're highly enthusiastic about something more than anything else, um, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna do an excellent job of doing things. Does that make sense?
that's
Like
true.
you ultimately hit a wall in which you have to switch roles. Like you have to be knowledgeable about things and willing to learn about different things, especially when it comes to ideas that are associated with business things, um, business projects, etc. Right? Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Right.
Like I have, for example, like I have a lot of different friends who are like very, very excited about these new things that they're trying to build up from scratch. Like for example, you find that there's this care project program that one of my friends has recently started, and basically its ultimate goal. I think it's a nonprofit or something. Its ultimate goal is to be able to, so to speak, reach out to communities and persuade them to have speech and debate forensics programs in their local school from, I believe, from the middle school to like high school level. So that's a great idea, and me personally, I think that's something that I can be very passionate about. But if I don't have the knowledge to move forward with every step necessary that has to do with like setting something like that up successfully, then ultimately,
Those are the kind of things you can only do after you make money. You set up nonprofits after you make plenty of profit. Then if you feel like being charitable and going all nonprofit and doing some helpful shit to the world, fine. If you come out of high school and you're like, I'm going to do something that's not profitable for anyone,
right,
then you're not going to get any money for it. And then you're going to be like, and the government needs to pay for my shit. And I'm going to rant about it on Talking with Famous People. Is that what you want? I don't think so, Mr. Non-profity nonprofit.
right. But the reason I said why I brought up that example was because this friend of mine, he's very enthusiastic about what he wants to do, but his willingness to learn about different things that are important for the establishment of that type of nonprofit or something, the successful establishment of it, is very low. So it's like, in a sense, it's like, yeah, you're enthusiastic, but you're not enthusiastic all around, right? You're not necessarily doing the things that you have to be doing in order to build something worthwhile and successful.
I think, for me, enthusiasm works best when it grows in small chunks. So, like, when I first started coaching debate, I loved coaching debate, and my ambition was to win a tournament, Get one of my teams to win a tournament. And then my ambition was, to get a couple of different teams into the trophy. And it just sort of grew and grew and grew over time. My enthusiasm basically stayed the same. My ambitions as to what I might do with it changed and grew. And I think the problem is that people get enthusiastic about big ideas early on, rather than remembering to be enthusiastic about big ideas requires a lot of
Right.
built up enthusiasm about the little functionalities of it.
Right.
So, you know,
It's like it's like for example, it's like I like the idea of having a really nice, dynamic, aesthetically appealing autonomy debate website, right? So I come to Eric and I'm like, hey, I want to do this. You know, I want to get this done. I want to make it look this way, and I want to make everything look nice. You know, and I'm very enthusiastic about it because I'm now telling Eric and I'm telling him like, what do I need to do, because I know you know how to do this stuff, so I know that I can feed off of the information that you know about, right, based off of how to use different programs and stuff to build a
Dreamweaver
website.
specifically.
Right.
Dreamweaver.
So eventually, for example, like in that case, I hit a wall where it was just like, wow, I found myself reading into, you know, how to use Dreamweaver and how to use it in a more effective way for the purposes of having, you know, like a business website, for example, anything that has to do with like exceptional marketing and stuff. But yeah, that's
And then what happened, Abraham? Then you learned about Dreamweaver and you
Yeah.
started thinking about how cool it will be when you
Right.
eventually open a gym with your brother and make a website for your gym. Now
yeah.
that's very ENTP-esque behavior, but it's coming from an ENFJ. Why? Well, he's FE first of all, so it's easy for him to get caught up into things that involve other people, like his brother or somebody else like that. But second of all, his second slot is NI, introverted intuition. So that you think, well, that's not going to generate a million different possibilities. But here's the thing: he's locking on to some intuitive truths about the nature of things that could be different and could be better and such like that. And he's not wrong about that. But the problem is one of time frame. And this is the one challenge about dealing with younger people, is they tend to not have a very good sense of time. For example, Abraham thinks like that Dreamweaver thing is a proven failure or something. The Dreamweaver is sitting there for him to use the tool when he gets around to it and feels like it, which is why he has it. And he will eventually. And he may play around with some other thing first with it. That's fine. At some point, he'll have then additional skills that he can use. When he does have, when the moment's right, he'll use it. I don't care that he can play around with what.
Right.
It
So
doesn't matter.
the
at all.
Dreamweaver thing is like an example of like when you ultimately fail to be enthusiastic all around, right? I still have the same enthusiasm and same fire that I had in the very beginning, where I wanted to create this new website that was really nice and ideal. I think now it's just a matter of trying to take my time to learn different ways in using Dreamweaver, for example.
Well, I think one big problem that happens in society, so to speak, is that people will go, oh, now I'm embarrassed, or I don't want to even go back to that thing because now I'm like, I didn't do it. I said I was going to. For me, it's like, well, for example, okay, Basement Overlord. I made him admin of quadruple.org. And I don't even, I'm back check. I don't know if he did anything or not. He might have. Probably didn't. He's probably thinking, well, I'm not going to do anything now. It's been such a long time. In my mind, I'm like, well, maybe it'll be 6 months from now. Maybe we'll come back to that and do that. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. It's not a failure in my mind. It's life happens. You know, life happens however it happens. But it's good to have those seeds planted. That tool is there for him to use. Quadruple.org is there. Basement Overlord decides he wants to do something with it. We might reconnect some point down the line. If Talking with Finch becomes bigger and has more pull, so to speak, then there might be more in it for him, and he might be more self-motivated to do that. See, I don't like pulling people. I don't want to pull people. I want totally free and independent agents interacting freely with one another, libertarian style.